Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Baldurs Gate 3. Today I'm back to talk about a range of interesting details that I didn't know about the game even after so long involved with it. It's always good to learn something new, whether it's a different secret or a bit of depth to the game even now. So with that said, let's just get started. First up, we have this fantastic detail about the origin characters and what they desire most. How can you know this? Well, it literally shows you in a specific encounter. In Act 3 you can find this character called Nauis, which leads to a special dialogue for the person speaking to her. First you have to save her from a mind flare though, but in turn she'll reward the speaker with some nice imaginings of their deepest desires. The result is interesting dialogue for say the Tav, but more importantly reveal deepest desires for the origins, but also, pretty importantly, a powerful buff called Rapture. This grants the effect a nice 1d6 bonus to attack rolls, ability checks and saving throws until the next long rest, so since it's so strong it is worth saving that specific buff in this encounter until you go do something tough. But to get back on track here, how do we know the true deepest desire of the origins? Well, as you can see by these screenshots posted by a happy goth on the subreddit, the Tav gets 4. The words you desire most would be say, be revered, contented, powerful or rich. These are pretty generic wants to be open-ended for the player, but if you do this as the origins, they get the 4 and then a surprise 5th option that is unique to each origin character. So let's run through the ones we know about. Gale desires to be wise, which is pretty standard but funny considering his whole bomb situation. Is that not more important? Will desires to be free, likely because of his warlock patron situation. Carlax is quite sad. She just wants to be alive, and with everything she faces about her situation, that's understandable. Shadowheart desires to be whole, probably in reference to her missing key memories and how things have been altered, and her whole life being a bit of a lie. Asterian's is maybe the worst. He desires to be safe. He's a victim of abuse and a lot of manipulation after all, so that's just a tough one. Apparently, the Dirge's desire is simply to be sane, which is funny in its own way. But yeah, shout out and thanks to a happy goth for posting about this. It's nice to get this bit of insight. Next, how about a weapon that I have literally never seen before until a random Reddit post about it a few days back. It was posted on the build subreddit by a user Sir Tarek St. Pat, and it is insane. This purple two-handed greataxe is called Sethan, and it has 2 incredible special abilities, one being spiritual greataxe and the other reduce. The spiritual greataxe is a level 6 evocation spell. It's like the spiritual weapon you'd use as a cleric, but way stronger. The summon deals a whopping 3d8 force damage with apparently a spellcaster mod on that. It's also fully immune to psychic and poison damage and is resistant to every other damage type on top of that, which is insane. With it you can use basic attacks or maybe lacerate for a usual bleed. Overall, it's great DPS and very survivable, so a very good summon. Then there's also the reduce option. You can make the target smaller as normal. That's like a 1d4 reduction on the damage and disadvantage on strength checks and saving throws, which is nice, but the summon's obviously the stronger thing here. Both of these skills will be usable once per long rest though, and the description of the weapon references this concept. When this axe careens through the air toward an unfortunate head, the whistle of its spiritual counterpart is never far behind. It's like the axe has its own JoJo stand or something. So very cool, very strong. How do you get it? Amazingly, it's sold in Rivington, just right at the start of Act 3. There's this unmarked merchant called Ferg Droger, just southeast of Arthur's mansion by the Rivington waypoint. This is an NPC you probably interact with if you're doing some of Shadowheart's backstory, but he has a hidden item, the axe, and also other hidden items where you need to pass his checks before I'll even show them to you. You start the conversation and choose the sounds lucrative option. You can pass a detect thoughts check and then ask him what do you do with all the wares, and then pass a persuasion check. Finally, we can now ask him to show his wares, including the incredible Sethan. There's other items for sale here when you do pass that check, but I just had no idea this weapon even existed, and it's ridiculously strong specifically for that summon. According to a commenter on the wiki post about it, if you have a Sharon Shadowheart in Act 3, you won't even need to pass the checks because he'll just like you enough immediately. Though he will notice her one way or the other when you interact with him. Could be wise to leave Shadowheart out of this if maybe you've had a take to saloon. Contextually, it seems this unmarked merchant is buying up valuables from the desperate refugees, and that's how he got his hands on all this stuff. And it amazes me that there's any item really that I'm unaware of at this point. Speaking of Shadowheart though, here's just a silly observation for you. Shadowheart's true nature is actually foreshadowed in a subtle or not so subtle way. If you take a look at a saloon statue, you can see a very specific hairstyle. The flat bangs across the forehead, the hair that hangs on either side of the cheeks. It is literally Shadowheart's hairstyle, only a little bit longer and perhaps a bit looser. So if you just happen to be really knowledgeable about what Saloon has and what kind of hairstyle she has, you could have seen this somewhat obvious foreshadowing. Or as the post that made me aware of this called it, forehead shadowing. Look, I just thought this was so stupid and clever that I had to include it, so credit to Bard Messenger 24, you fiend. Alright, so here's another fun thing I personally never stopped to think about. The actual scope and scale of the game is tiny, at least in terms of the location, the events of the game. For us, of course, it's all over the place. We're in the wilderness, the ancient ruins, there's a swamp, there's a creche for Githyanki, bits of the Underdark, the Cursed Lands, the city itself, and all the details in between. But in terms of the region of Faerun, the massive landmass that it all takes place on, this is where Baldur's Gate 3 is. The entire game takes place within this tiny little red box. Insane. Why am I talking about it now? Well, because I was inspired by Baldur's Gate 3 to finally join an actual D&D campaign within this world with some friends for the first time. I'm currently playing a character that's in Netherwinter, which is all the way up to the north, and I just never really considered the map of this true world, so it's very cool for me to see that I'm playing my own character in the same universe, and really I'm just north up the coast right now. It's also just kind of funny to think about how much happens in Baldur's Gate 3, yet it really is happening in a tiny location, basically down a river and a road and then the city. If you've never tried D&D but did love Baldur's Gate 3 and maybe the mechanics of combat, I would really recommend it if you can find the right group. It's been really cool so far. But all of that brings me to a big topic you might not know about. What could be next for this world and these characters specifically? Officially, there will be no Baldur's Gate 4, at least not by Larian, which is a damn shame, but understandable for many reasons. Sven himself talked about how game executives are a massive, well, blight on the industry. Not his words, but mine. Controlling the funding in selfish, short-sighted ways. They don't give enough support to the people who make games. Hasbro laid off nearly everyone who worked with Larian. We're talking about an insane success. And they cut not just some people, but almost everyone involved from their side. Sven did clarify on this though, that it's not necessarily Wizards' fault for their choice to go another way. But hey, we do know that Larian are working on 2 new projects they're really excited for, and just because it's not going to be the same world, it's still going to be Larian. On the other hand, there will be a Baldur's Gate 4, or so it seems, and that might be a thing you didn't know. That thought should fill you with more concern than excitement, unfortunately. They're currently considering their best options, talking to lots of partners as they call it, working out what the future of Baldur's Gate actually is. What dev team could make Baldur's Gate 4? This is according at least to Eugene Evans, Senior Vice President for the Digital Strategy and Licensing for Wizards and Hasbro. The quote is that they certainly hope that it's not another 25 years between games. Imagine trying to follow up after Larian to create a sequel that's not going to pale in comparison. That's probably an impossible task, but it certainly seems like one day we're going to see the fruits of that. Either way, Hasbro clearly wants to do more with these characters that have now become so beloved since they're just so popular. The quote from Eugene about it was, "I think it's too early to express specifics, and I think there's a much bigger question about how we approach Baldur's Gate in the future, but I would like to think that all of those characters, for the sake of the fans, could potentially appear in future projects." So we'll see. We do know that the narrator for the game and Neil Newbon, who played Asterion, they want to be involved more with these characters in these worlds. For example, did you see that Neil Newbon is actually playing in D&D as a new character? Neil is voicing Vecna for D&D Beyond's Eve of Ruin. So it looks like we've not seen the last of Neil in D&D in the universe and different characters, and that's a great thing. Next, did you know that you can speak directly with Bane? Yeah, Bane, the Lord of Darkness and God of Tyranny, who Gortash is the chosen for. The way you do it is actually quite simple. If you kill Gortash and then cast Speak with the Dead on him, you'll end up not speaking with Gortash, but Bane himself, which is pretty crazy. This was the thing for some time, but interestingly, it had no voice acting at all. That was until recently back in patch 6, where they fixed this issue. So here's what it sounds like.
I am Bane, the Black Lord. I am the ultimate tyrant.
Apparently there was some kind of quest line with Bane in the game, or at least planned. It seems like Larian cut this, like a lot of little things, unfortunately, in Act 3. Bane is one of the least explored gods of the chosen trio. Gortash doesn't have a ton himself, so it's nice to see at least something be added. Speaking of the chosen trio, here's one thing about Orin, which just wasn't known by myself, and I checked with a few others just in case, so I've decided to include it. First, as you likely know, Orin's grandfather is Sarevok, who just so happens to be a bhaalspawn himself, the main antagonist of the original Baldur's Gate to my understanding. To see him here in the third game is fantastic though, but obviously his lineage has caused quite a stir. His daughter, Helena, gave birth to a child, Orin the Red, who killed her own mother. But who was the father? Well, you know, Orin thinks it's Bhaal. She's believed that the whole time. The truth is, it's Sarevok. Sarevok and Helena planned for Orin to be the perfect offering to Bhaal. They literally, create a baby, to give it to Bhaal. Instead, she became the perfect chosen and killed her own mother in doing so. There's many ways to learn about it, but it's explained clearly by a note written by Sarevok himself. The blood of Bhaal must never be wasted, only multiplied. I knew it from the moment of her birth and every day thereafter. I watched a babe become a woman, Helena, my shape-shifting beauty, my daughter, and Bhaal's waiting womb. Really gross. In her, I planted my Lord's seed, and thus did we beget the blood lamb, Orin, the child of my child, and Bhaal's sacrifice in waiting. I did not know that it would be Orin that Bhaal favoured, not Helena, but it matters not. Orin would help to bring forth a new birth in Bhaal's name, a world baptized in blood. So Sarevok didn't care either way. Apparently, according to a post about this, when you kill Orin as the Dirge, then speak with Sarevok, he'll be a little bit disappointed, because he was hoping the Dirge and Orin would make a child. The levels of incest run strong in this family. But there you have it, just some things both interesting and useful that I've learned over the last little while. I hope it was interesting and you might have learned something new, but if you guys have anything you'd like to add to these topics or reference something new, then let us know in the comments. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.